And welcome to Roadside Notes. I'm Christopher, the Route 66 chaplain, and these are readings from the Faith and Good Courage Journal, found at faithandgoodcourage.com. These are stories from and for the road, a little grace for the miles ahead, and reminders that hope still travels with us. This is entitled Tell, sharing your story of faith from December 18th, 2025. Sharing your story of faith rarely feels grand while you're doing it. Most of the time it sounds like refilled coffee and a quiet voice, a table at dusk, a soft clink of a spoon, a truth that finally finds words. I've learned on Route 66 that testimonies do not always arrive with trumpets. They show up as road dust and honest sentences, the kind that admit where you wandered and how grace found you anyway. This reflection is the final in a three-part series, Living the Mission Statement. Stories about what it means to live the words God spoke into my life. Drive, heal, and tell others what I've done for you. There's a diner inside a truck stop just outside Kingman, where the light turns amber in the late afternoon. I like that hour. The way the windows hold the day just a little bit longer. People settle in, shoulders drop, and stories come forward on their own. A trucker tells a waitress that he's been now sober for 6 months. A young couple admits they almost turned back halfway through the state. A retired teacher shares about the student who wrote a thank you note some 30 years late, right on time. No speeches, just lives said out loud. I sit in my booth and I listen, and every now and then someone asks me what I do. I tell them I'm a chaplain on the road, still learning, still listening, still here because God handed me the keys again and told me to go drive, to heal, and tell others what He's done. Sharing your story of faith is not performance. It is permission. It's the kind that lets someone else breathe and say, me too. When you speak a simple truth about where you've been, you open a door for another traveler who thought they were alone. I used to hold back, waiting for perfect words. Now I aim to be honest. I have found the clarity that comes after courage, not before it. Tell the small piece you know. Tell the mile you've walked. Let God use a sentence to light the next smile for someone else. Out here, I've watched how stories create belonging. A mechanic tells me that he lost his brother and still hears him in the rattle of an old engine. A nurse on break admits she prays between rooms because some days the hallways feel longer than the highway. A grandmother writes the names of her grandchildren on a napkin and says each one out loud like a blessing. None of it is fancy. All of it is holy. This is what sharing your story of faith looks like when you're not on a stage. You lean in, you keep your voice kind, you say what's true, and you trust God will do the rest. There was a night when a man sat opposite me and said he had not been to church in 15 years. He kept his eyes on his coffee and told me why. Hurt has a way of making the road feel longer. When he finished, I did not try to solve it. I told him a piece of my own story, the loss that made me quit, the detour that lasted too long, the mercy that found me in a place I did not expect. He looked up and said, I thought I was the only one who felt like that. We sat there for a while, let the room breathe around us. Sometimes testimony is not an argument. It's a hand resting open on the table, saying, you're not alone. Sharing your story of faith changes you too. When you tell what God has done, you hear it again in your own ears. Memory becomes gratitude. Gratitude becomes courage. Courage becomes another mile you are willing to walk. You don't need to tell everything. You tell enough. A time you were forgiven. A prayer answered in a way you only understood later. a kindness that arrived right when you were sure that it wouldn't. The point is not to impress. The point is to witness, to say this happened and God was faithful. Over time, I've learned to hold a few simple rules. Ask more than you answer. Keep confidences. Choose humility over hurry. Never force a finish. If someone trusts you with their story, treat it like a sacrament, received with care. When you share your own, leave room for questions. Stories grow when they're invited to breathe. On the road and in any town, sharing your story of faith works best when your love is the motive and kindness is the method. In my roadside reflection, tell the truth you've lived, not the speech you think you owe. Tell it gently, with eyes kind and hands open. Somewhere, a wary traveler is waiting for permission to speak, to hope, to try again. Your story might be the mile marker that helps them find their way back to grace. And here's the secret. Telling your story is an act of faith. It says, I trust what God did for me matters enough to share. Every word you offer from the heart becomes a trail marker for someone behind you. Proof that grace still walks this road. We don't share to impress. We share to remind. That redemption is real. That healing is possible. And that the next mile is worth taking. So keep driving, keep healing, and keep telling. That's not just a story. That's a way to live. Travel well, my friends. Have faith and good courage.